All right, today we got model inverse, or modeling inverse and joint variation. If you remember way back, we did direct variation a long time ago, and we'll review that in just a second, but this is just the opposite of that pretty much. Inverse variation, first of all, two variables, x and y, show inverse variation if they're related as like this, y equals a over x. Inverse meaning the x is in denominator or divided by the x. You could also write it like this. If you multiplied both sides by x, it would be this, like x times y equals a. A has a special name. It's called the constant of variation. That's important. And the way you can say it is y is said to vary inversely with x. Y equals a over x, where a is a constant. It is just a number, right? Just a number. All right, let's review real quick. This is what we did way back. Direct variation was this. Instead of it being a y times x equals a, this was y divided by a equals x, or y equals a times x. I think we used k back in the day for constant variation. May have used a. Can't remember which one we used. A lot of books use k for constant. Constant, get it? But that's what direct variation was. So direct is like they're multiplying y equals a times x. Inverse is they're dividing a divided by x. That's an a, not a 9. A divided by x. So that's the difference. Direct, a times x. Inverse, a divided by x. Okay, tell whether each one of these show direct variation, inverse, or neither. The first one, you have x times y equals 7. All right, you could rewrite that like this, y equals 7 over x if you divided both sides by x. So that is definitely inverse variation. The second one, we don't have any variation that has a plus sign in it. So that's a neither. It's either got to have division or multiplication in it. Now this one, if I multiply both sides by 4, I get y equals 4x, which is exactly what direct looks like. Remember, 4 would be your constant. Up here, 7 would be your constant. If you divide a constant by x, it's inverse. If you multiply constant by x, it is direct variation. All right, the variables x and y vary inversely, so that means this is true. That means a divided by x. That means that is true. And y equals 7 when x equals 4. Okay, so y is 7 when x is 4. Without an equation that relates x and y. So if I'm going to do that, I would say, okay, if I'm going to, what is did? Well, it's fine. That means find a constant variation. So if I multiply both sides by 4, a is 28. So my equation that relates x and y would be y equals 28 divided by x. That is my equation, my inverse variation equation. Then it says find y when x is negative 2. So I'm just going to plug in negative 2 for my x, and obviously y is going to be negative 14 because everybody knows 28 divided by negative 2 is negative 14. And this is the same stuff we did with direct variation, but I know it's been a really long time. All right, the number of songs, they can be stored on an MP3 player varies inversely with the average size of a song. A certain MP3 player can store 2,500 songs when the average size song is 4 megabytes. So write a model that gives a number of songs n. Okay, and this says the number of songs varies inversely. So I'm going to say n equals a over, it says, well, if it pairs the number of songs size s is the size. So that's what it's going to look like. They did give me an example here. One MP player can store 2,500 as long as the size is 4. So I'm going to say 2,500 and size is 4. So if I multiply that right there, A is going to be 10,000, which is the constant. So 10,000, well, 10,000 is the constant. So I'm going to have this right here where it says write a model. So my model is going to be n equals 10,000 divided by s. So basically what you can do to figure out how many songs can fit on an MP3 player is you divide your average song into 10,000, and that tells you how many songs you can put on that MP3 player. So that's a good use of it, of an inverse variation. Okay, last type of variation is called joint variation. That's when you have more than two variables involved. Joint variation occurs when it varies directly with the product of two or more quantities. Okay, so the product, we're multiplying when we do joint variation. Here's an example right here. Z equals AXY. A is still your constant, varies jointly with X and Y. Here, P equals AQRS. You can have as many as you want. A is still the constant, but you are multiplying two or more along with your constant of variation for joint variation. Okay, quick example. Z varies jointly with x and y. So automatically this is true. Z equals a, x, y. Remember, a is our constant. Also, z is negative 75 when x is 3 and y is negative 5. I'm just plugging them in as I read. Write an equation that relates x, y, and z. So I'm going to solve that. If I multiply over here 3 times negative 5, that's negative 15. And over here is negative 75. So that means my a is 5. So my equation is going to be z equals 5xy. That's my joint variation equation. Then it says this, then find z when x is 2 and y is 6. So I'm going to just plug those in. X is 2, y is 6. Just multiply all that out, you get 60. So there you go. There's your two answers. There's your equation, your joint variation equation, and also your z when they gave you two more values. All right, last slide. Basically says write an equation for the given relationship. The first one says y varies inversely as x. This is a really good slide, by the way. It has a lot of stuff. Y varies inversely. Remember, varies inversely is a divided by x. That's an a. I keep looking like nines. I'm sorry about that. A over x. Okay, the second one. Z varies jointly with x, y, and r, such as z equals a times x times y. Times, remember, jointly is all multiplication. Part C. Z varies directly with y and inversely with x. If it's directly, it's a times y. Inversely is a over x. So you put all that together. A times y divided by x. Part D says y varies inversely with the square of x. Remember, varies inversely. I'm dividing a divided by x. If it's the square of x, it's a over x squared, which is okay. And the last one, E varies jointly with T and R. Sorry, X varies jointly with T and R and inversely with S. So if it varies jointly with T and R, that's A times T times R. And if it's inversely with S, it's divided by the S. And that's all you have to do on those. Okay, just that's a good review. That slide is really good. I'll take a picture of that or something. That has everything on it. So it has directly, jointly, and inversely has them all. All right, so that's it for the video. We'll work on it in class like we always do, and I will see you tomorrow.